Hello all out there in YouTube, and welcome back to my little corner of the interwebs. Now, I had originally planned on reviewing Demons 2 for this week. I did a review for Demons 1, and some people wanted me to review Demons 2, so I originally was going to do that. But it was a pretty hectic week, not necessarily busy, but there was a lot of stuff that happened, and things kind of got away from me, so I didn't have time to re-watch Demons 2. I always like to watch a movie that I'm going to review right before I review it so I can get my thoughts in order. So I didn't really have much time to watch Demons or much of anything this week, so but I still wanted to get a video out to you guys, so I thought I would just do a little fun, rambly video for you all, just because why the hell not? Just for the sake of giving you something for this week. So I have stated many times on this channel that for me, just for me personally, the two scariest horror movie characters are Candyman from, well, Candyman, and John Ryder from The Hitcher. And I'm talking about the original 1980s The Hitcher, not the remake that came out. For me personally, these are the two scariest horror movie villains. Not necessarily saying that they are my favorite horror villains. They are definitely in the top 5. But, you know, Hannibal Lecter is one of my favorite characters of all time, and Leatherface, I love Leatherface. But in the number 3 spot, we have Candyman and John Ryder together in that spot. Because the way they do things in their movie, I find terrifying. And these two characters are similar in how they are scary. The way that I find them frightening is a similar characteristic between these two characters. Of course, Candyman and John Ryder could not be more different in terms of who they are in their movies. You look at Candyman. What is Candyman? He's essentially a spirit. He's a supernatural being. He's a legend. You say his name 5 times in the mirror, and then he will come and kill you. John Ryder is a person. I mean, he does have some mystery about him, and people can argue that he has some otherworldly qualities, but in the long run, John Ryder is a human. He is a person. So you have a supernatural being, and you have a mortal. And again, as different as these characters are, the reason they are so scary is a similarity that they share between the two of them. Just a quick plot synopsis of both movies, and a spoiler alert for anybody who has not seen Candyman or The Hitcher. I love these two movies so much. Candyman is one of my favorite horror movies of all time. The Hitcher, every time I watch it, it gets higher and higher on my favorite horror movies list. But let's go through the plots of these movies. So the premise of Candyman, like I said, it's a supernatural horror movie. A lot of people, I've heard some people say that it's a slasher movie, but I've always thought of it as a modern-day gothic horror movie. I mean, it has the feel of a gothic horror film just put into the modern-day city of Chicago. Instead of having castles, you have buildings. Instead of dealing with ancient ruins of abandoned castles, you have these buildings that are crumbling, and there's some urban decay in there. But anyway, so Candyman follows a woman named Helen Lyle, who's doing a thesis for her university about urban legends, and through her studies, she hears about the legend of Candyman. And like I said earlier, Candyman is a spirit. He's a man who his right hand has been sawn off, he has a hook jammed in the bloody stump, and if you say his name 5 times in the mirror, he will come and kill you. Now, Helen Lyle is, becomes fascinated with this urban legend and tries to learn more about it, and finds out about this location called Caprini Green, where everybody who lives there thinks that Candyman sort of reigns over them and haunts this location. So she goes there, she continues to study Candyman, she continues to question Candyman's existence, one thing leads to another. I won't go into too much detail, but, she, starts creating doubt of Candyman in the community, or at least some of the community, and then Candyman comes to make Helen Lyle part of his legend. Because Helen Lyle is doubting Candyman and is trying to spread doubt of his myth, he has come to kill Helen Lyle and make her part of his legend. But not quite in the way that you would expect in a horror movie. And I'll get into that in a minute after we talk about the plot of The Hitcher. The plot of The Hitcher is very simple but very effective, which, I love praising. I do like complex movies, but I also think that simplicity can be so good in movies. There is an artistry to simplicity. And The Hitcher, we follow this character, this young man named Jim Halsey, who's transporting a car across America. And he's on this long stretch of road, and he ends up picking up a hitchhiker, who we soon find out is John Ryder. And as they're going in the car, the man reveals to Jim that the last person who picked him up, he murdered him, and he's going to do the same thing to Jim. But Jim does not give up. He's a fighter, and he manages to get this man out of his car. This is all at the beginning of the film, by the way, like the very beginning, like the first 5-10 minutes. But Jim Halsey manages to get John Ryder out of his car and then basically manages to escape him. And because of that, and you don't really know why, they never really give the full hand of John Ryder's motivation. They hint at things here and there, but we never know what his true motivation is. For some reason, John Ryder has decided to set his sights on Jim Halsey and see how much he can push this kid, just to see how much he can ruin this kid's life, and, like I said, see how far he can push this kid's will to live, basically. And in that statement there is why I find Candyman and John Ryder so terrifying in their respective movies. Because in so many horror movies, and there are a lot of great horror movie characters out there, and people can find horror in any character. There are many people who would say Freddy Krueger is the scariest horror movie villain. A lot of people would say Michael Myers is the scariest horror villain. Possessed Reagan from The Exorcist, the scariest horror villain. And of course, like the more realistic horror villains like Henry Lee Lucas and Frank Zito from Maniac. So everybody finds a horror movie character scary for specific reasons, but here's why I find Candyman and John Ryder so scary. When you look at these two movies, you could just have Candyman going around killing people and it would have been a very effective, thrilling, supernatural slasher movie. But Candyman isn't really out to kill Helen Lyle. Don't get me wrong, his intentions are to kill her eventually, but he wants her to, in a way, want Candyman to kill her. He wants Helen Lyle to come to Candyman and willingly become part of his legend. So Candyman does not try to kill Helen Lyle. What he does is he kills the people around Helen and makes it seem like she's the one committing the murders. He kidnaps a baby and makes it look like Helen's the one who did it. He kills few people, and again, makes it look like Helen is the one who killed these people. Constantly turning everyone against Helen until she has no choice but to go to him. There's a very distinct line in the movie. Here it is.
They will all abandon you.
And that is very similar to John Ryder. John Ryder doesn't want Jim Halsey to become part of his mythology or anything. Like I said, John Ryder's just a guy. And one of the things that makes him so scary is we don't know a lot about him. We don't know his motivation. Like I said, it's hinted at what his motivations are, but we don't really know. John Ryder is a true agent of chaos. I've heard so many people that when they think of like chaotic villains, they go to the Joker, specifically Heath Ledger's version of the Joker. And that's a great performance, and there's a reason why so many people have been drawn to that character. But when I think of a true agent of chaos, the first one that comes into my mind is John Ryder, because he just goes up and down this road killing people. For what reason? We don't know, and we don't fully know why he's decided to target Jim. There's just this, there's a moment in the film where you can tell he just decides, it's like, oh, you know what, I'm gonna fuck with this kid, I'm gonna push this kid. But even though it's not done in a supernatural way, and even though, he's not trying to, get Jim to become part of some supernatural legend, he does pretty much the same thing that Candyman does. What John Ryder does to push Jim Halsey's limits is he murders people and makes it look like Jim is the one killing people. Like, he's killing so many people up and down this stretch of road, killing cops. Like, Jim will stop off at a diner and somebody will be murdered there and he'll be the suspect. Nobody knows anything about John Ryder. Jim will try to turn himself into the cops, and John Ryder will come and try to and kill the cops, and then it looks like Jim does it. So, again, yet killing all these people and framing Jim for these crimes just to see how far he can push this kid to his limits. And that's what's so frightening about both these characters. What Candyman and John Ryder do is they aren't trying to kill the main characters. They're turning the whole world against these people. Candyman is turning the whole world against Helen, everybody she knows and cares about. Candyman is turning them against her. I mean, yeah, okay, her husband was an asshole who was cheating on her, but fact of the matter is she is turning the whole world against... Candyman is turning the whole world against Helen. Pardon me, sorry about that. And John Ryder is turning the whole world against Jim. These two characters are pushing these protagonists to their limits, trying to get them to a point where they eventually want to die. That's what I find so terrifying about these two characters. And in Candyman, you know, like, it's hinted at in Candyman that Helen is the reincarnation of Candyman's lover from back when he was alive, but, you know, there's still that element of Candyman control, you know, like manipulating Helen's life and making her look like a murderer. And he does that in the sequels as well, and there's reasons for it in there. Not so much in the Candyman remake, but anyway, moving on, tangents. And John Ryder does the same thing, you know, he's pushing everybody, like, he's pushing Jim to his limits, seeing how much he can take, seeing how much he can handle the world being turned against him, all these people being turned against him. It's one thing when a horror movie villain is out to kill the main character. There's plenty of tension in that, you know, everybody fears death, so many people fear death. But for me, it's so much more terrifying when the villain is like, no, I'm not gonna kill you yet. I'm gonna push you to the point where you want it. I'm gonna push you to the point where either you want me to kill you or you want to end it all yourself. Let's see how much you can handle until you surrender to my desire, which is just for you to for you to end your life yourself, either by my hand or your own hand. That's, in a way, it makes it more personal, in a way. It makes it feel like a more personal attack. It's like, we, the audience, can connect with these people more because it's not just, you know, someone trying to kill them, it's someone wanting them to, in many ways, kill themselves, or at least want to be killed. When a villain is focusing all their energy on one person, on just fucking with one person, it hits you in a different way. It hits you in such a different way. That's just such a scary thought to me, just the fact that someone is so hell-bent on fucking with you and ruining your life, and, like I said, turning the whole world against you. That, for me, is such a scary thought. And, you know, people talk about psychological torture in horror movies, you know, mental manipulation from horror movie villains. That is mental manipulation. That is pure psychological torture. Making people think that you are a murderer, making people think that you are this horrible, horrible person, and you have nowhere to go, but either the only choices you have are either ending your life or going to the person that has been destroying your life. It's frightening. I mean, yeah, you can compare it to a lot of abusive relationships in many ways. But yeah, just a simple little video this week. Candyman and John Ryder, in my opinion, like, for me, the two scariest horror villains of all time, and that is why, and for the reasons I've stated in this video, that's why I find them absolutely terrifying. That's why they are the scariest horror movie villains for me. But, you know, I want to hear from you, so leave down in the comments below who is the scariest horror movie villain for you. Not necessarily your favorite, but if your favorite horror movie villain is also the scariest one for you, by all means put that down. But specifically state who you think is the scariest horror movie villain. And try not to just go for how they look, which a design can be scary enough. I mean, if the look of the character scares you, by all means put that down. But specifically what they do in their movies, and like how they act in their movies, and their basic goals in their movie, how that scares you. I'd love to hear this. And let me know if I've made any sense in this video. I literally decided to do this on the fly because things kind of got away from me this week, but let me know if this made any sense. Let me know who you think the scariest horror movie villain is down below. Thank you so much for watching this channel. Thank you for the continued support. It does truly mean a lot to me that you take time out of your days to watch these little videos I do. I will hopefully have the Demons 2 review for you next week. But yeah, thank you again for watching. I hope you all have a wonderful day, week, or whatever. And until next time, this is the Maniac, here to remind you that the Grindhouse will never die.